Good day, comrades and friends. This is Dr. Gabe Roberts, the quantum chiropractor, the subconscious healer, new thought minister, and your expert in energy medicine. Earlier, I asked the question of how could a healthy mother with the perfect job, perfect life, eats healthy, organic vegetables, juices, exercises regularly, is very physically fit, somehow develop breast cancer. And there were many responses, everything from genetics to toxins to pH. Although some of these answers have some correlation, none of them went as deep as I'd like to go. We should understand that there are certain hidden biases present in areas of Western medicine and even functional medicine. And these biases are that diseases have a physical cause, such as genes or external forces, such as pathogens, including Lyme, bacteria, parasites, viruses, toxins. And so that is kind of a biased look, always looking at something external. And of course, that was the focus with the majority of functional medicine, something I have got a great deal of experience in. These cases that are purely physical, in Western medicine, there's actually a term, idiopathic, um, meaning they don't even know what causes it. Another bias is that diseases happen in organs like heart disease, liver disease, lung disease, maybe diseases of connective tissue. And there's even specialties designated to study these diseases of the organs, all while excluding information related to what correlation to physiology and emotions and what occurs early in social interactions. These specialists know a lot about the certain organ system or systems they're dealing with, but they don't know the patients. How many of you ever been to a respirologist, a gastroenterologist, a cardiologist, a neurologist, a dermatologist who's asked you about childhood trauma? What about the stresses you have in relationship to your spouse? What about your job stresses? Anywhere I go and ask this, anywhere from 2 to 5% at most, say that the doctor has addressed this. And I mean, even in the fields of naturopathic medicine and functional medicine doctors as well, it's not much better there. It is good if they ask, but I would be curious on how long they actually talked about it with you or what kind of interventions were done. But an overwhelming majority, it doesn't even occur to them to ask these kinds of questions. All these visits to doctors, whatever kind of doctor you might be seeing, most of the time, overwhelming majority of the time, stems from early childhood trauma. Very few exceptions may be genetic diseases, and these can be altered with certain lifestyle modifications, how a person handles stress, how they express themselves. Are they living to their fullest? Are they doing their heart's desire? You know, or are they suppressing, who they really are? Some of these can be addressed with nutrition, MTHFR. BRCA genes can be assessed with nutrition as well. But these diseases are extraordinarily rare. Most diseases have little or nothing to do with genetic factors. So my point is that early stressors in childhood, okay, this is a big origin of where this comes from. It's not what happens to us, but how we process it. It's the inability to express or the suppression of feelings which actually create long-term health effects. This woman I particularly asked about is someone I was reading about. Her particular case, her name is Sharon, and she's 50 years old today. And when she was 35 years old, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. So stage 4 means the cancer had already spread completely throughout her body's lymphatic system and made it all the way to the bone by the time she was diagnosed. And at the time she was diagnosed, she has 3 young children, and she was married to a wealthy businessman. Her own career was a very high functioning executive from Microsoft in California. Now, from the outside, she had the perfect life, perfect marriage, perfect home, and then boom, she's diagnosed. She was very healthy, very physically fit, always ate clean food, but yet somehow diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Now, this doesn't really make sense from the surface, right? Well, Sharon had a revolutionary event happen within herself, which is not the usual course of action in this case. Now, she received the best medical advice that was available anywhere in North America and had some of the best care that a person could receive. She also saw integrative doctors. So it wasn't purely Western medicine, but still, the prognosis was pretty grim. She was told because of the severity of the spread that they weren't sure she had over a year to live. And that's, again, a typical prognosis with stage 4. Despite the therapies, that we give for a person with stage 4, chances are the person will be dead within a year. Now, this revolutionary event that she went through when she was diagnosed, she took a moment and she realized that her life had not been her own. She was actually sexually abused as a very young kid, and her response to that abuse was very similar to what happens to most children when they experience such trauma like that. They believe it's not about the adults, it's all about themselves. You see, in the child's mind, when they have this experience, any kind of trauma, they come to the conclusion that if this terrible thing happened to them, I must be a bad person. So they decide that to make up for that, they have to be very, very good. They have to compensate. They have to go out of their way and be of service to others. They have to suppress their own feelings, their own identity. So she forms the identity of a very good daughter, doesn't ever talk about it, doesn't want to disturb any waters or rock the boat. She's a very good employee, as well as a very good wife who suppresses her own voice for years, not bringing up the husband's addiction issues that he had, because again, she didn't want to rock the boat. So when she's diagnosed with this and comes to the realization that she wants to live, she flips a switch in her mind. She flips that identity switch. She decides the hell with all this perfectionist and all this flawlessness. And she immediately confronts her family over the issues that she had kept quiet about all her life. She confronted her issues, she confronted her issues, brought them up about the abuse she had endured as a child. She confronts her husband. She actually left her high-paying career, which it wasn't really her. It didn't let her express herself the way she wanted to be. It didn't let her express who she really was. So she begins to live this authentic life within herself, not suppressing any feelings she had. And now, here it is today, 15 years later. She still has cancer in her bones, but it's completely inactive. And she knows that in order for her to stay alive, she has to be authentic and she has to be her true self. So I believe that the journey she went through tells us a great deal about how we can approach certain diseases, illnesses, and any kind of challenge we have in regards to health. Now, this might sound odd to some people who are not aware of the inseparable connection between mind and body and how the suppression of feelings and emotional conflict within the unconscious mind has a major part in a person's prognosis and how they're going to do with certain developments of illnesses. But a study involving 500 women that looked into biopsies for suspicious or concerning regarding malignancy, as well as combining with psychological evaluations, shows some striking correlation to this. Okay, there was 500 women, and they all showed, psychological evaluations here. And basically, the ones that were looked at that had indicated they had stress had no impact on the amount of lesions or breast tissue growths they had. Then it looked into women who suppressed their feelings and again found that there was little to no correlation. When it examined women who had stress and suppressed their ability to express themselves, these women were 9 times more likely to develop breast cancer. And this, of course, baffled the researchers and medical scientists because they were basically adding zero and zero and they got nine. But the answer to how you get zero plus zero equals nine becomes very clear if you realize that what happens inside an individual on a physiological level is very much determined or affected by what happens to them on a social level, particularly in early childhood years. So if you find this interesting, go to my page, Dr. Gabe Roberts, and like it or tag a friend as I continue to go in depth on the mind, how it works, and show you the greatest part of you is something that you'll never see.